On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, Brandon Ingram extends, plus the Raptors and the Sixers.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. It is Wednesday, February the 12th. And I am your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can also go and find us on Instagram, and you can join the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link in the description of the podcast. It's free to join. Great place to come hang out, talk ball among friends. It's pretty optimistic in there these days. It's a nice change of pace after the last little while. But I think people are feeling pretty all right about where this team is headed, even though it seems like most of the national perspective on the Toronto Raptors' recent dealings is very negative. But that's fine. Whatever. We the North, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, you can go, of course, and support the daily newsletter as well. The QR code is on the screen for the daily Lockdown Raptors newsletter. If you want to go click through there and subscribe, all you got to do is drop your email in a bar and you will get it 5 days a week to your inbox. Me writing on the Raptors 5 times a week. Katie Heindel, national stories 4 times a week. Michael Shearer, basketball poetry every Thursday. He's probably going to be on the podcast next week, by the way. He's also quite optimistic about the Ingram in Toronto fit. Looking forward to have Mike on the pod. Either way, please do it. It's much appreciated. Again, QR code if you're watching on YouTube, or link in the description of the podcast if you're listening on audio. On today's show, we're digging into the Toronto Raptors taking down the Philadelphia 76ers in a very hilarious game, a very hilarious finish. The Raptors just trying to serve up a win to the Sixers any way they can, and yet Scottie Barnes, Immanuel Quickley, too good. Joel Embiid, too yipsy. We'll get into that. Plus, Brandon Ingram extends. Big news of yesterday. We'll break down why I think it's a pretty good, all things considered, deal for the Raptors. You know, some upside, some downside. Probably means it's pretty fair. Good, bad, coming up later on as well. But let's get into it. Let's talk about a very good tank win for your Toronto Raptors. Look, you can't lose every single game. Try as you might. And this is going to be a thing we probably see in the last 20 games where the Raptors play as easy a schedule as you could possibly conjure up. They're not going to lose all the time, but there are going to be games where things happen that make you feel good. And in sort of the broader sense of the team building towards something, you can accept a little notch in the win column if some of the things that took place in a game like this happen. First of all, you got to laugh and point at the Sixers, which is extremely funny. That team is so screwed, unfathomably screwed, and part of it's kind of sad, very sad. Joel Embiid's health stuff, it really is a gigantic bummer. But the team itself, generally quite unlikable. And it's pretty funny to watch them be in the state that they currently are. Man, oh man, we'll talk more about Embiid a little bit later on. Guess what? He's going to be part of the bad. But when it comes to, the other stuff that happened in this game for the Raptors that was in fact good and sort of stuff you like to see even whilst trying to lose, you have to start with Scottie Barnes and Immanuel Quickley. They were fantastic in this game. They were awesome individually. They were awesome in concert with one another. It's the best they've looked together. And look, they haven't played many games together, but it's the best they've looked together since Quickley got into that game on New Year's Day against the Nets. And they both just looked perfectly at ease and in tune with one another. Quickley in this game came out absolutely rip-roaring, super aggressive, getting downhill, paint touches, creating wide-open catch-and-shoot threes for others, looking for his own offense, eager on the pull, 8 3 attempts in this game. You'll love it. You maybe want more than 3 attempts from 2, but he was doing such a good job, I think, of instead of shooting when he got around the rim, just kind of parlaying paint touches into better looks for others. I'm not upset he didn't rack up a bunch of 2-point attempts in this one. It was just like a really good, steady point guard game from Immanuel Quickley, who picked his spots for offense, and it was awesome to see, right? Like, this is the stuff. If this is Quickley, if this is the version you can get from him most nights, that's a damn good player and someone you're perfectly comfortable having paid $32.5 million for the next 4 seasons beyond this one. Again, we got to see it more. He's only played 14, 15 games this season, and he's probably been good in 5 or 6 of them. It's not a high enough percentage hit rate at this point. I also really think you have to bake in the lack of rhythm, the lack of any sort of consistency. He hasn't played more than 6 games in a row at any point this season. Really tough to get into flow when you're just kind of in and out. And so I'm really hopeful and excited about what Quickley is going to be able to provide here. Hopefully going for the rest of the season. Again, like, there will be times where it's not great, but if this is something he can tap back into and you can kind of work the 2-man game with Scottie the way he did in this game, where look, there's still stuff to work on. They're still not perfect when it comes to pick and roll timing and all of that. Quickley kind of hit Scottie low a couple times, hit him early a couple times when he wasn't quite ready and in target position in pick and roll. That stuff, you can iron that out. I am not worried about that. I do think, just like putting those two guys together at the top of the arc and kind of having stuff flow from that, pretty good idea. Whether it's pick and roll stuff, I mean, there's certainly some inverted pick and roll they've really yet to tap into with Scottie and Quickley screening, and just kind of having Quickley use flare screens to kind of fly off to the wing in those situations where you're running 2 and 3 man actions at the top of the arc. That's a really viable way to get him going and kind of use the gifts that both Scottie and Quickley possess in concert with one another. I thought this was a really great Quickley game. And defensively, man, dude's bringing it. Like, very early on in this game, he gets up in the shirt of I think it was Justin Edwards, maybe, and forces a turnover. He just, like, he's giving it, man. His screen navigation looks improved. It's better. He's talking. The team is talking. If he's getting caught up on screens, he's recovering, and the team is on the string. It's I'm not worried about Immanuel Quickley's defense really at all. He's not Davion Mitchell, but Davion Mitchell also wasn't going 4 of 8 from 3 and kind of lighting it up the way Quickley did in this game at all. Like, it's a big change for the offense. Plus 13 very much makes sense that he was the team leader in plus minus in this one. Scottie Barnes, I mean, look, he said after the game he was inspired by Matt Bonner, of all people, on the Raptors show, saying that he can't get to the rim. And look, man, get your motivation where you can, I suppose. The nothing is sort of the fuel of an angry warpath quite as much as the vitriol of a local radio host, I guess. It'd be nice if Scottie brought this every single night and was kind of hunting the rim as much as he was tonight. Man, was he all over the rim in this game, which is impressive considering Joel Embiid's lurking out there. Didn't seem worried at all. He goes 10 of 16 in this one, 12 of 15 at the line, 15 free throw attempts. You love to see that for Scottie. 10 boards, 3 assists, a steal, 2 blocks, like just everywhere. Defensively, an absolute menace, just kind of there to swallow up anything that gets near the rim. Awesome on the perimeter, awesome around the rim. Like, he's just been an unfathomably good defensive player of late. One of the better individual defensive seasons I think we've literally ever seen from a Toronto Raptor. It's not going to get recognized for all defense because the team is not good enough on defense. But what Scottie Barnes is doing himself is off the charts awesome and really sets the tone for what he can be as a player going forward. And this game really was kind of the perfect Scottie Barnes encapsulation, and what I think they're going to try to tap into when Brandon Ingram joins the mix as well, right? Scottie maybe a little bit less on the ball. Ingram and Quickley kind of guiding a lot of the creation and initiation. Scottie able to kind of get into spots and attack, tilted defenses, get into the post where he can operate and sort of work that mid-range magic. Like, there's going to be ways to use Scottie Barnes more as a play finisher around these two guys. He's going to have his creation opportunities as well, of course. But I think the sort of balance they can find with Quickley, Barnes, and Ingram, if everything works, if everyone makes the concessions they all need to make, that we've all agreed they need to make, there's a version of Scottie Barnes that can kind of tap it. This is the type of game that makes me not at all worried about Scottie Barnes. We talked on Monday with Big V about the idea that, like, he needs to be tightening his game up and refining things and all of that. And I get it, but also he's so capable of doing stuff like he did against the Sixers just by kind of quickly locking in, that I think, once the team is a little more serious and they're actually playing for something next season, I don't think it's going to be hard to get this version of Scottie Barnes most nights. I think the 3-point volume is going to go down as you see Quickley and Ingram and Dick kind of carry the day when it comes to the 3-point volume on this team. He's not going to be required to take 5, 6, 7 threes a game. He's not going to be in positions where he's just kind of left with no recourse but to pull an above the break 3 because he hasn't been able to create an advantage because he's creating from the top with no other support around him. The context is just going to be so different, and I think it's going to unlock this kind of Scottie Barnes performance a lot more often, which is very exciting because, man, oh man, what a game from him. Those two guys together, like, among their best games together, I think, since Quickley joined the Raptors, for sure. Maybe the best. It was right up there, no doubt. And then the last point on this being an awesome tank loss, or tank win, that is, Gradey Dick. Really great one from him. Really struggled to start this game. Like, couldn't finish at the rim to save his life. really had just like a lot of trouble getting going in this one. It had been a couple of rough games for him in a row. And then he closes this game incredibly strong, banging threes, 3 of 8 from downtown. And most notably, hits a dagger three to go up 99-96 late in this game. And it just felt like the dam bursting. I don't know. Anecdotally speaking, it feels like every single Raptors close loss this season has featured one or two wide open, beautifully created Gradey Dick wide open threes that just wouldn't go down. He's shooting 18% on the season from three in clutch situations this season. That's not great. That's not what you want for a guy who is going to be someone where the action is going to funnel his way a lot of the time, especially now that they have Ingram and Scottie and Quickley and all these sort of creative on ball types. Like there are going to be times where Gradey Dick is the trigger man in big moments. And he was last night and he canned it. And that's great. Like that is progress. That is like the work paying off. That's player development, man. Really great to see there as well. As fun a win as they've had all season, and yes, a lot of it is because they played the Sixers, and beating the Sixers is never not fun. But we'll leave it there for the moment and come back on the other side and get into Brandon Ingram extended. Big news yesterday. And look, man, I was down on the trade a little bit to begin with. The more I've sat with it, the more I now see how it's all going to look with this contract being signed. I'm getting pretty bullish. We'll get into why that is coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find decluttering, refreshing the space, helps me get back into a routine. And yeah, we're working on the room next to this one right now. We're working on right now. We are expecting a child soon, and we got to rework the rooms and make a baby room and get a guest room going and all of that and relocate a bunch of stuff. And so we're in the midst of redoing a room and probably going to have to buy some furniture. Wayfair, great place to go find furniture. Their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit your style and budget. My favorite part is that it's free. It's hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. That is a beautiful thing. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every single space. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Back at it here, talking Raptors, Sixers, and kind of leaving that, putting a pin in that for a second. We'll get back to that in the final segment. But got to talk about Brandon Ingram. Big news yesterday. It came down from CHOMCHE, middle of the afternoon. 3 years, $120 million on an extension for Brandon Ingram to stay in Toronto. The Raptors avoid taking this all the way to unrestricted free agency in the summertime. And look, it's not like a perfect, unassailable contract. There's no doubt about it. It's still a big bet for a guy they haven't yet seen play with the other guys they have on this team. But ultimately, my reaction, I mean, first of all, the day I can stop having opinions on whether contracts are good or not is the day that my job, which I love, becomes perfect. I don't care, frankly, but I have to care, I guess. It's kind of the way it is. I mean, it's the reason I'm not a GM is I can't be bothered to count the dollars and cents, and I don't really care about, is this the best deal they could have gotten? If the team is good, I don't give a damn. And I do think the team is probably going to be pretty good next year. We'll get into that in a little bit here. But again, back to the deal. 3 years, $120 million, a player option on the final year. And that just kind of feels like the cost of A, keeping this from free agency, and B, like not locking in something super long, right? I think I would much prefer this to a 4 or 5 year deal, which they would have only been able to sign if they went to free agency in the summer. Which comes with its own risks. Do the Nets or the Wizards or the Pistons or some other team that creates cap space get itchy and throw some money at Ingram? Maybe he's not the type of guy that those teams would sell themselves out to go and do that for, but the option is always there. And at the very least, the prospect of walking into the cap space of, up to 3 teams this summer is something that at least Ingram's representation could have used as leverage in negotiations. And I get it, right? Like they're paying him $40 million. I think the sort of negative view on this is, well, they weren't really negotiating against anybody. They were negotiating against themselves. Like, why did they pay him $40 million? I mean, first of all, this is what good players cost in the modern NBA. It's just what it is. And he was eligible for 3 years and $144 million, so $48 million a year. So they save $8 million on what he could have been getting. They don't go full max. That's good. I have no problem with that. It'd be nice if he was making $35 million a year, but I just don't think, if I'm Brandon Ingram's representation and I'm looking at the Raptors cap sheet and I'm saying, Well, Immanuel Quickley's played like no games this year and is making $32.5 million. My guy's better than that, even though my guy's also not played many games this year. He's got a longer track record, of course. Like, yeah, he should be making a little bit. He's made an all-star team. Like, he should be making significantly more money than Immanuel Quickley. It's to me a fine, happy medium. And it's not like the Raptors can't extend off of this in the future, right? I don't think the league is going to go such a direction that Brandon Ingram kind of goes back into being a clear max player like he was on his last contract. The dynamics have changed. The landscape has shifted. And what is a max player is not the same now than even what it was last summer, right? Like Pascal Siakam got a max. I don't think Pascal Siakam's getting a max now or this summer. It's just we can get into the Siakam comparisons and all of that to it here in a sec. But overall, yeah, there's some downside that, it goes well for a year or two and he wants more money and walks. There's downside that, you lock him in on an even bigger number if he's really good for the next couple of years, and then you're kind of hamstrung there. But if he's really good, that's one of them good problems. I think there's reason to like it. Again, you don't commit yourself to 4 or 5 years of a thing we haven't seen yet. I still have very real concerns about the fit, and I'm fascinated to see how it's all going to come together. Just because I don't see like a glove-like fit right now doesn't mean it can't be achieved. Doesn't mean it can't be there. Doesn't mean people are incapable of change. It's a new team. It's a new environment. Brandon Ingram seems excited. Darko Rajakovic is a coach who's elicited buy-in and sort of streamlined players and improved them just by putting them in better spots. I believe in the ability there for some amount of buy-in, especially if the team's winning. If the team's good and winning, buy-in gets a whole lot easier to sell to guys. And so I'm not writing off the notion that Brandon Ingram is just who he is, even though it's going to be tough to change his stripes. I don't really care if the fit's not perfect at the moment. You get a guy in a reasonable contract. Again, I think it's pretty reasonable, right? Like, again, the cap nerds can disagree and say it's too much money. They don't have any bargain deals on the books, but like they have a lot of good players. Having a lot of good players is good. They've set themselves up to kind of power through this rebuild in a really interesting way with the Ingram addition, with the double shot of talent they're then going to get by the draft lottery this summer, wherever they pick, 1 through 7, whatever it's going to be, probably getting a pretty good player. There's a lot of interesting guys at the top of this draft. Obviously, some will be better than others. That's how it works, but you're going to infuse a little more talent into this roster. It's a younger roster. It's a higher upside roster than the roster they had, say, a year ago, 14 months ago. I mean, just go back and look at what this roster was in December of 2023 before the trade. Scottie Barnes, you had Pascal Siakam expiring, ready to get a max. OG Anunoby, quiet quitting on the team. Obviously, it would have been nice to keep OG around. It didn't seem like it was in the cards. Jakob Poeltl was there. He was playing pretty poorly at the start of last season. He's been much better this season than he was last year. Dennis Schroeder was there running the team into the ground. Gary Trent Jr. was there getting blown by on defense and jab stepping his way into mid-rangers. I'm not too, chapped about the loss of Gary Trent Jr. Precious Achiuwa was Precious Achiuwa-ing all over the place. Chris Boucher was really bad last year. Gradey Dick was just like a non-entity in December of last year. Jalen McDaniels was on this team. Thad Young was on this team. The ghost of Otto Porter was on this team. Malachi Flynn was like the backup point guard. The team has been totally transformed over the last 14 months, and they're better. They're deeper. They have way higher upside. There's young guys on the team. They've like basically drafted a whole bench in the 2024 draft, it seems. Scottie, Ingram, RJ, IQ, Yak, Grady, Ochai Agbaji, Jacoby Walter, Jamal Shed, Jonathan Mogbo, Jamison Battle. Like, there's something here to work with. And getting Ingram to kind of bolster it all while also getting this high pick, I think it's an unorthodox way to power through a rebuild. I know it's kind of broken the groupthink brain that thinks every tank and rebuild has to follow the same course. It's got to be 3-4 years. It's got to be all the bites at the apple. We got to have all these picks for bites at the apple, or you can just go trade for a whole ass apple. That's what the Raptors did. They traded for a whole ass apple and then extended that whole ass apple. And now they have Brandon Ingram on the team. I think it's totally fine. I think they're going to be a good team next year. And even if the fit's not perfect, even if it's still a little janky and Scottie and Ingram don't quite mesh or it takes some time, they're just going to have enough good players on the team that they can have interesting combinations over 48 minutes at a time and just kind of live with it, right? And still be successful and still win games, and you figure things out from there. This isn't about going and winning a championship next season. It's about being pretty good, being competent, taking steps towards relevancy. And I think they're very much in a position to accomplish that in an Eastern Conference, by the way, that is a disaster. The Sixers, look at the Sixers. They're a mess. They're not going to be around long if they're not already gone off the face of the earth. The Bucks might be in the dying days. The Heat just traded Jimmy Butler. They're a little less talented now. The Orlando Magic have stagnated, spinning their wheels, waiting for a guard to come and score a damn point for them. Like, it's all right to kind of have accelerated things here. I don't think they've necessarily, quote unquote, skipped steps. They've just gotten good players. That's fine. Like, I don't know. This whole idea that there's only one way to be a rebuilding team, that you have to be the Wizards or the Jazz, is silly. Look at the Wizards and the Jazz. Look at the Jazz. They've been bad for 3 years now. No end in sight. All they have to show for the rebuild is what? Keontae George, who's getting benched by Will Hardy right now? Like, that is, like, I don't know. I can tell you what I'd rather be. The team that's actually trying to do things in a league where you have teams dumping guys and getting under the tax for salary purposes. To see the Raptors actually being kind of bold and going forward and just saying, hey, let's just get good players and cut the crap and be good and try to power through this rebuild, sort of amplify the sort of effect of getting a high pick by also adding another good player to the mix. I think it's all a perfectly sensible gamble the Raptors are making here. There are no guarantees with any team building. Never. You can tank for many, many years and never get a guy. If you spend your entire life trying to capture one of the 7 guys at any given time in the league who can actually just kind of put you in the door as a contender just on his own, like, you're going to spend a lot of time waiting around and wasting what could be fun years playing fun basketball. That is, I think the Raptors have looked at it and said, hey, like, we might get one of those guys this summer. It's our best shot to get one. Why not try to sort of angle towards that while also accelerating what's going into the future here? It's a perfectly fine way to build the team. And yes, it's different. Different is good. If every team build was the exact same, the league would be incredibly boring. But if you look back at the history of the NBA, there's no one way to build a winning team. There's 100 different ways to do it. And amassing a bunch of good players and then parlaying those good players into more good players and then better players on top of that is a pretty tried and true way to do it. The Toronto Raptors kind of just did that 6 years ago when they won the NBA championship. And so, yeah, I get it's unorthodox. I get it runs against the sort of general consensus of what the Raptors should be doing right now. I don't think it's an abdication of a plan. I think it's just an acceleration of a plan. And if you do a rebuild fast, why would you be punished for that? Like, if you get good players quickly and you can kind of cut the amount of time you spend languishing, that's fine to me. That's a great, smart way to go and build a team and not waste time trying to be terrible when you don't have to be. And again, I know I'm like a boomer old man for thinking all of this, and it's so in vogue to try to angle for picks and be lottery fodder for years and years and years. But I don't know, man. The Raptors just have a lot of good players now. Having a lot of good players is a fine way to go about things, building a team. Think about this. The Raptors gave up as much for Brandon Ingram, who they've now signed and avoided the free agency mess with, as the Grizzlies gave up to dump Marcus Smart. Think about that. The Grizzlies, the number 2 team in the West, gave up a first and a second round pick to dump Marcus Smart. The Raptors gave up a first and a second round pick to get Brandon Ingram. It's way more fun. I'm way more into that. Shout out to Keith Parrish from Fast Break Breakfast for enlightening me on that one on his show this week. Yeah, like, it's all right to be rooting for a bold team that's trying to do things. I have no problem with it. And look, this summer it's going to get tricky. It's going to get tight. There might have to be some cap casualties. RJ Barrett is the guy who really stands out as like, maybe this is the guy who gets moved. Or maybe the team just pays the tax, as Bobby Webster alluded to maybe doing last week with his comment about how the standard for what constitutes paying the tax is different than it used to be. You can always duck the tax by the deadline. If things aren't working and you're expensive and it's not quite working, you can always move RJ Barrett by the deadline next year, duck the tax, be the Bucks, be the Grizzlies, get cheap and all that, get leaner and cheaper, whatever, and just dump guys for nothing or whatever. But or you can just kind of have a lot of good players and see where it takes you. It's I was down on the trade to start with, man. I think I've been fully 100% talked into it being a thing totally worth betting on here for the Raptors. And there's no guarantee it works out. Ingram may not be healthy. The fit may not work, but they're in a better spot now than they were a week ago. And again, look at what the roster is now and the future outlook of the roster is now compared to what it was last year in December or last year in February or March. It's night and day. They've done this just quickly. You shouldn't be punished for doing a rebuild fast. And it kind of feels like maybe that's what the Raptors are getting right. And I don't even want to sound like a homer. I've been like pretty staunchly against a lot of the stuff the Raptors have done over the last few years. I hated how they handled the Pascal stuff. But I don't know. The stank of what they did seems to be hanging over the discussion of what they're doing now. And I think they're just wildly different things. Anyway, we'll come back on the other side, round it out with the good, the bad, and the from this game against the Sixers. Poor Joel Embiid. Get to that coming up in just a sec. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls all day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where OpenPhone comes in, the number one business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. I'm a big believer in the separation of work and life. As a work-from-home freelancer, it's been very hard. It's been like a true challenge for me over my life of working, and for just $15 a month, that can be changed. Just the cost of a few coffees, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or a computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedInNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedInNBA for $20, 20% off your first 6 months. OpenPhone.com/LockedInNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. That's pretty big. Go do it. Wrapping it up here, the good, the bad, and the from a pretty fun win over the Philadelphia 76ers. Again, this is a thing I liked, a thing I didn't like, and I think this got me a little bit intrigued about what we saw last on the floor from your Toronto Raptors. And look, man, I am there's a lot to like from this game. Picking the good is very difficult. I kind of covered a lot of the good stuff with Scottie and IQ and Gradey Dick hitting that big three, just the general pointing and laughing at the Sixers. But for me, the good in this one, I'm going to go Jonathan Mogbo. Really liked his game in this one. You know, not super huge in terms of point production or anything like that, but very solid across the board. 4 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, a couple steals, tasked with guarding Joel Embiid for more time than anyone on the team. Pretty awesome stuff to see Jonathan Mogbo as a rookie, a 6'7", small ball 5, making it happen. Obviously, a lot of help in those situations. They were great and super aggressive in doubling Joel Embiid. Sent a ton of length his way. Mogbo just arms for days. Scottie Barnes arms for days, making those passes at the doubles really difficult. It was not just Mogbo himself absorbing Joel Embiid like he was Marc Gasol by any means, but I just, the defensive prowess with him, the upside with him defensively is so crazy high. And if he can just be a passable offensive player where he finishes some lobs, really great early pick and roll action between him and Immanuel Quickley in this one. I think it was one of the first possessions of the game that got Mogbo a dunk. Like that little basic stuff, lob finishing, roll finishing, cash in the odd catch and shoot three. It's going to make him viable enough to be on the floor on defense. And man, oh man, does that change a lot of things for what this team can go and do. Really into it. Great game from Jonathan Mogbo. A tidy 4, 5, and 5. 5 assists. 5 assists. Pretty fun. The bad, that Joel Embiid end of game gaffe was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. Passes up a 3 to tie it. Bobbles it on the drive. Gets it stolen by Gradey Dick. Honestly, such a sad image that I almost had a hard time laughing. Almost being the operative word, of course. It was very funny. Laughed extremely hard. Sixers fans booing. Can't even be happy for a day about sports. They win the Super Bowl, and then 2 days later, nope, got to boo our guy. Sixers fans never change, man. Philly fans, maniacs. Yeah, I mean, it was tough to watch. It's funny to watch the Sixers just kind of fall into a state of disrepair and be this screwed, to have this much committed to Joel Embiid and Paul George going forward. It's rollicking fun. As a hater, as someone who really does not enjoy this Philadelphia 76ers, who is maybe kind of having a fun time watching Nick Nurse go through it a little bit. But at the same time, it's a bummer, man. The health for Joel Embiid is a really sad story. I don't care that he's someone who has been polarizing, who a lot of people don't really mess with. I get it. I completely understand why. But to have a guy like that, who's that talented, kind of have things go this way because of health, it's a bummer. It sucks. But man, oh man, that possession last night, really funny. Made me cackle. Good stuff. It was the bad, though, because it was really bad. This is tough scene, man. Like watching a car accident. The is Ulrich CHOMCHE. CHOMCHE? Yeah, we'll work on it. Either way, Ulrich CHOMCHE played a quarter of this game as the youngest player in the NBA against Joel Embiid. He played fourth quarter minutes in a close basketball game. Yeah, they lost his 12 minutes by 12 points. It was like basically he did what Joel Embiid backups have done in playoffs for years and years and years, is just come in and get hammered as the backup center. But I don't know, man. There's a lot to like there with CHOMCHE, just physically, dimensionally, he's enormous. He had a block in this game. He, again, so much work to be done. I do not think even next year you're looking at him as like a rotation piece, but 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I love that they've done this with the third two-way spot. I think this is what the third two-way spot should really be for. You had the two before, they had the third one. Use it as like a long-term play. Use it to, flex your development staff's might. Use it to bring a guy along slowly and know that, hey, like he's there. We're going to have these other two-way spots, maybe more interchangeable. Guys are going to come in. They're going to get looks. Maybe they'll make NBA deals off of those looks, and then we'll cycle new guys in. But to have one is going to be static, it's a 2-year two-way deal as well. Like you have that one static and kind of just carved out for, we're going to work on this project with this. I love it. I think it's a great use of the G League, a great use of the two-way spot. And look, man, like, again, he's not ready for the NBA. Very clearly, he looked pretty out of his out of his depth last night. As much as he, kept things functional, a couple really nice double teams on Embiid, stuff like that. You can see it just the way he moves for that size. Really impressive, really tantalizing. And in the G League this season, the team is winning minutes when he's on the floor. It's kind of impressive for the youngest pro basketball player in North America. It's a lot to dig in what he brings to the table defensively in particular. The team has 106 defensive rating. The 905 does when he's on the floor. That would rank like 5th in the G League in terms of season-long defensive rating. Again, they're a positive in his minutes. They're a negative team overall in the year, and he's just turned 19 like a month ago. I'm into it, man. CHOMCHE, definitely the big time. Very cool to see him get rotation run. We're probably going to see a lot of him as the Raptors try to lose games, and he might help them lose a lot of games this year because that's what happens when you're the youngest player in the NBA. You're going to lose some minutes, but love the developmental swing they're taking here, and I am very hopeful about what it can bear down the line for this team. It's a pretty fun thing to see them just kind of, again, have this sort of developmental pipeline going, right? They got quicker guys they're bringing along faster. Maybe don't even need the G League. Jamal Shed barely played in the G League this year. Just kind of ready to be a backup point guard. He was really good last night. Jacoby Walter, great G League run for him, bringing it along. Jonathan Mogbo, same as well. Started the season in the rotation, goes to the G League, comes back. Like they're getting back to their roots here, man. You couple the developmental roots stuff. You bring along this second wave of guys to complement a very expensive but pretty talented top 6. I'm into it, man. Very into it. We will leave it there. Thank you so much for rocking with the show. As always, we'll be back again on Thursday to talk about Raptors Cavs. Probably no big extension news or anything like that, but there will be something, I'm sure, because this team just keeps on churning up fun stuff to talk about. It's a night to talk about the roster being night and day from last year. Just the general interest I have in dissecting this team compared to last year, off the charts difference as well. It's pretty fun. Either way, thanks for rocking with the show. We'll be back again Thursday. In the meantime, follow, subscribe, rate, review. Go to the Discord, link in the description of the podcast. QR codes on the screen if you want to support the newsletter, which you should. It makes me feel good. Helps me out big time. And I like rating for all you guys. So please go do that. And we will leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging. We'll talk to you Thursday. Bye-bye. I'm on a cold streak, man.